All right, guys. Welcome to the 5th episode of the Man Cave, and it looks like we have, looks like the same four as the first episode, isn't it? Isn't it the same four as the first episode?
I
No,
wasn't
we
in the first one.
had Young
Okay.
in the first one.
Who was it?
Supyoung.
Supang.
Oh, it was Supang. Supang. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I was in the second.
Supang got a little bit scared after that first one, and he's like, "Oh, I might get in trouble." No, I'm just kidding. Supang is busy with the job interview, but he'll be back soon in the next couple episodes. So, you guys have heard a couple of the man caves. Now, what are your thoughts and feelings on the man cave right now?
Men don't have feelings. Men are. No, I'm just kidding.
Good. I was gonna say amen, bro. Amen.
Men no feel. Men only do.
Caveman, right? What do you guys feel so far about the last 2 episodes that just came out? If you guys have been listening and stuff.
Yeah,
Well,
liked a lot of thought. Nice. I'm just saying, yeah, it's really interesting how the conversations developed. Like, not really knowing exactly where this is gonna go. Yeah,
Right.
Been very interesting. Yeah.
What about Eddie? You're gonna say something?
I was just saying, I mean, out of all the segments, that we've seen on the MSD, it's nice that there's so much like kind of cross collaboration too, like even sort of back and forth sort of thing with multiple different people, and with the girls, as you mentioned, because sometimes it feels like a one-way conversation, right? If we're just recording, but because it's like in this format, it's really cool. It's kind of different.
Mace,
Yeah.
how about you?
I'm just kind of liking how things. I'm liking how. How do I want to say? I like how I'm seeing things unravel. Because I think as time goes on and we continue to do this particular segment for MSD, that more and more guys will want to join. There will be more and more feedback, and I think it's going to be good for everyone that's watching because everybody could take something out of it. We've only had 2 that have been posted so far, and I think that they've been pretty solid.
Here's my first question for the, because we're gonna do kind of a reaction to the girls episode and stuff. And first thing, this comment came up in the chat room. Just want to bring it up to you guys. What do you guys think of the name, the Provipuff Girls?
As soon as I heard it, I just shook my head. I was just like, no. I was like, this cannot be real. This is not reality.
Hey, I thought we could match them and we could be like the Provi Rangers. The Provi Rangers and the Provipuff Girls.
No, sorry.
I do like it over the Lagoon thing.
I think so. Lagoon sounded kind of a little bit too mysterious where you're not going to expect like open conversation.
It just sounded wild.
Yeah.
If it's wild, and if it's the girls' lagoon, it's like a wild party going on in there.
The first thing that popped into my mind when it said lagoon, like I went back to my childhood and I remember Peter Pan like going to the lagoon with the mermaids, and I'm like, this doesn't sound right at all for this.
But because it
doesn't work.
I'm in the girls' chat room, so it's very, very different because the person who suggested it is younger, in campus, like 19 years old. It's like, oh, what about Provipuff Girls, right? And I was like, oh, that's cool. But the girls are like, oh my gosh, that's so... Well, I can't even say that they said it like this because it's all in text. But that's what I heard when I was reading it, right? That is so cool. Oh my gosh, wow, what a great idea, right? And then they made their thumbnail. And everyone's like, that's so great. I love it. Oh, yeah, thank you so much. I love you too.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh.
It's a good thing.
I wonder how they're going to react to that. Mimicking that voice.
Do you guys understand the reference though?
I'm looking.
From
the
old cartoon. Yeah, the Powerpuff Girls.
I actually love that cartoon. Like Buttercup was cool. Was it Buttercup? The green one. Yeah.
Buttercup was the blue one.
That's totally out of my generation.
Yeah, I had all sisters growing up, so if they wanted to watch Powerpuff Girls, it's like, all right, we're watching Powerpuff Girls, and I just had to wait for when Teen Titans came on. That was my jam, I wanted Teen Titans, but hey, sometimes you got to sacrifice for Powerpuff Girls.
My generation's like the old school Transformers, G.I. Joe.
Yes. Yes,
Like
I
that
watched those too.
was the best.
I never got into the cartoon version of that one. I think I missed it. I missed that train.
Oh, you mean
For G-
Transformers?
the Transformers, no, G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe.
Oh,
Transformers, they made a modern version, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, the old version is the
Mhm.
best one. But I'm only saying that because I'm old.
You're
Pretty
so
much.
old.
That's why we got into that discussion on my podcast about Disney movies.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, like I I agreed with that for the ones and the remakes for the
Yeah.
remakes because like
Mhm.
for example, Lion King, I watched that like 10 times. Tarzan, so many times. So
Right.
I never even tried even to touch the remakes. But the new Disney movies like Up, Sing, those were pretty good.
Yeah. Up was
Mm,
really
mm.
good.
Yeah, Up
Yeah.
was
I
one.
agree.
Yeah,
I got a question for you guys. I know we're really off topic right now, but what do you guys think about Frozen? I
Oh
liked
yeah,
it, but I didn't think it was that great.
I agree.
I didn't mind it. It was just okay. It wasn't. It didn't like amaze me. Like I wouldn't watch it like repeatedly like I did
Right.
the other ones.
Right.
But I didn't dislike it. Yeah.
I agree. I didn't dislike it. It was good. I never watched it a second time, but it was good enough that when I noticed that, oh, they made a second one, I watched that one.
I heard
I'm
the
like, oh,
second
okay.
one's better than the first one.
It was pretty good. And I only say that I would agree with that because of Olaf, the little snowman.
Oh, okay. Well,
So
Eddie,
funny.
you look so out of it. Like Disney's like out of your comfort zone.
All the new ones, I have like similar gripes with them too. I don't think they capture the same sort of like morals as like the old ones do, like as well. But like actually, like Frozen, yeah, Frozen was okay too. But even Frozen, I have a gripe with it that actually kind of stems from the live action Aladdin. I don't know if you guys saw that. But,
I
my
refuse to watch it. I refuse to.
It's so bad. But there is like a song that was really popular from that movie, like I Won't Go Silent or something. And then like so many like celebrities and different people, like even in Korea, they sing that song too. But I hated it so much in the movie because it's the scene where Princess Jasmine is singing the song how she won't just go silent, she won't just be kidnapped, but like and as she's singing, everyone else is frozen. But the moment that it unfreezes, she just gets taken. So it was like this whole song about her not, just being taken away quietly, and then she gets taken quietly like as soon as the song was over. So there's like a lot of these songs that don't capture like the accurate
Wait,
process.
how did she escape?
I don't even remember. I think it was the same as the original Aladdin. So there was like stuff with the other characters involved getting her free.
So you're saying it took a man to save the woman?
Precisely.
And a monkey and a genie.
Wait, wasn't there a magic carpet too?
Oh yeah, that's it.
I just had to say that. I'm sorry. I was setting up for that. I was just setting up for that one thing.
Bump set spike.
Yeah, it required Will Smith to get out of that one.
Okay. Which is also a man. Just want to make sure everyone knows that too.
He's a male genie. A male genie.
Yeah, that's right. All right, let's go into some of the stuff that we heard from. We can't obviously go over every single part of the Provipuff segment, but for you guys, what were some of the things that you're like, oh, that's very interesting, or I agree or disagree? I guess we can start with Julius. What's something that you heard and you're like, oh, that's interesting?
Well, it was kind of interesting to hear about the kind of awkwardness at church between the interactions between the opposite gender, because I think that's across the board. Yeah, it can get super awkward, which was kind of, it was just kind of interesting to hear about that, and the reasons why they thought it was, and just from a different perspective. But I think overall, the thing that I felt the most was that the females of the pod were kind of much more masculine than your typical females.
What do you mean by that? Even though I agree.
Not mannish like men. Like, okay, I'm not saying like you're men. Like,
right.
but just like their interests and like the fact that I think one of them did MMA.
Yes, that's yes.
That is not a typical female thing.
Right. So yeah, I guess they were talking about a spectrum, right?
Yeah, and I agree. There's a spectrum because masculine. When we say masculine and feminine, it doesn't mean man or woman. It's just talking about tendencies or like, and actually both men and women, they both have masculine and feminine traits. It's just a matter of how much of each, depending on where you fall. Yeah,
would you say it's similar like when you have MBTI, like you're extroverted, introverted, but everyone's on this scale, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So like it doesn't mean that you're only one or the other. Yeah.
Okay. How I got a question for you. Anyone want to add to what he's saying about the awkwardness between genders in church?
No, I think he nailed it.
But there's a lot to do with that too, but I think we can go into that later. There's something I think that would be very important too, actually, that I've been thinking about recently.
Well, why do you want to go into it later? Why don't you just go into it now?
Like it was a very deep topic.
So depth doesn't start. We have to go to the end to be deep.
Yeah, we gotta get into it. But like, I mean, I think what you mentioned just about MBTI recently, just now, and what Julius was saying at the end, I was really agreeing with that too. Because one thing I mentioned, I think in the chat and before we started recording was a lot of people have been actually commenting, not just in the girls video, but in the previous few weeks, right? About like, oh, a lot of these differences don't seem like differences between guys and girls, but like just things that are across the board relevant to a lot of members, which like we just said, is very true too. But one thing that came to mind when I was thinking about that, I was like, oh, that is really true. And there's like the psychologist that I was following for a long time. And I think a lot of the guys here know too, and people online too. And they were saying across the board for men and women, there's MBTI, but there's also like the big 5 personality trait thing, right? And saying for that, the big 5 broad personality traits, men and women across the board are highly similar.
Right.
Like you might think that there are a lot of differences, but actually the biggest observable difference in even like the most different category, which I think was agreeableness, is only 10%. And that is like of the 5 traits, the only one that's like that far apart. And 10% seems like nothing.
Right.
But one thing he was explaining with that I thought was really good was saying actually, but 10%, if you look at it on the macroscopic level, it has really big implications too. Because if you think about like 10% of your country's population or 10% of the world's population being a lot more agreeable versus a lot less disagreeable, it has a lot of different implications, and it does really make a big difference too. So I was thinking that, yeah, of course, yeah, by and large, yeah, men and women are 90% similar, even in the category of agreeableness. But that small bit, and like what Julius was saying, like this kind of like in a general sort of way, those differences are very important to consider too.
One stat that I thought was very telling of the difference between at the extremes is when it comes to aggressive and violent. So they said that 60% of men are more violent than women, like 60% to 40, which is not a really huge gap. But then he said if you go to the very extremes, like really hurting and killing and doing like awful things to each other. The one example that was given was more women will attempt suicide than men, but more men die because they're successful. Like girls aren't successful. You heard that, right? So there's way more women committing, like attempting, but more men die because they're more violent and they're more aggressive, that when you get to the extreme, like to the point of suicide, they're going to get it done. And you kind of see that there is on the extremes, there is a big difference. I think that's it's a really, really good point, because I don't know what it means to be cultural because of culture.
Like you think it's totally psychological and nurture, or I mean psychological and like innate.
I think more is like you're born with it, more than the opposite side of you're raised to be that way. Just that's my feeling. Yeah, because you know, if we look at the chemicals involved, we have way more testosterone than girls, like way more. So it creates, you know, testosterone makes you way more aggressive and violent.
Yeah, like, well, in those particular things, like um personality traits, I think, yeah, I think a lot of them, yeah, are more psychological, like innate, because like you just see the way, for example, boys start playing with each other, you
Yeah.
know, that competition and that like, I guess, aggression is
Yeah.
already there when they're kids. Yeah, if I think about how we acted as kids too. But I think
Wait, before you get into that, I got a question for all of you here. When you were kids and you were playing, of course, it's very aggressive and wrestling and stuff. Were you the one beating people or were you the one getting beaten?
Both.
Both.
I'd say both too.
Okay. All right. I guess I'm the
It
only one
just
who was just
depends.
massively beaten.
I've heard some of your stories, and I think it warrants that thing that you said people say to you, like, "Are you a pastor?"
Yeah.
I actually remember there was a time where we were playing sports, and I don't know what started it, but all of a sudden, me and Sky just started wrestling.
But that was like playful though.
Yeah, no one was trying to hurt.
Yeah, we're not
each
trying to. It
other.
was just straight up playful. It's just kind of like, I think with guys, it's like when the challenge comes, you're like, let's just go.
Yeah.
Right. Someone makes a challenge, like, all right, and then we just start, you know, wrestling and stuff. I won't see girls doing that.
Never.
Yeah.
Considering your guys' ages, some might expect that story from like 10 years ago. But little do they know it was from like 3 years ago.
No, this was like 2 years
This
ago.
was less than 2 years ago, guys. That was like a year and a half.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's go back on the topic. So you're talking about the awkwardness of male and females in church. Like, okay, so this is the real question that I want to ask you guys is, because this could be something cultural more than anything else. Because I am not awkward with girls outside of church. Like whether it's at work, whether it's meeting people at a cafe, whatever it is, I have like friends outside. There is zero awkwardness between me and girls outside of church, but it's inside where it gets a little bit awkward. That's me. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah,
I would agree with that too.
I'd agree too.
So actually, I guess this kind of enters that kind of that realm of conversation that I was thinking about, because I was speaking to members about this throughout the week, actually.
Right.
This in a related sort of question. I would say actually I feel the same towards women in Providence and without. It wasn't always like that too. And there are like kind of two things that I think was really relevant to this, but because a lot of the conversation about friendship between men and women came up in the girls recording, as well as in our last week's recording, right, that we had on Man Cave too. And so I think it's a really important question. And someone wrote a comment on the girls recording, and I was like kind of responding to that too. And for me, I felt like it's not about like, there were times where it was like you can't be like close, like you can't like associate with the opposite sex in like any sort of way, right? And so yeah, there were times where we experienced that, but then I really always felt that it was like, oh, you just can't do it inappropriately. Like sometimes like we kind of like push it a little too far, but in essence it was always that, because that's it was the same sort of expectation in the world too, actually, like how we should engage in the world too. It's like just don't cross the line sort of thing. But for me, actually, and I think this is the conversation topic I want to bring up related to this, that I would like to hear from both the guys and girls too, was like over these last 5 years or so, I've had the chance to speak to a lot more blessed family, like from many different places. And I learned so much actually from engaging with people who've been like blessed and who've been in Providence for like 30 years and like their story. And because they're a man and woman, but they're in that relationship, right? So that's like a big sort of like data gold mine that we have for some of these questions too, about like, what's kind of appropriate, right? And like one thing I really saw and I think this is a really important question for now, especially with all the things going on, was like, I really felt that like blessing, like the blessing as we have it, but also just like the relationship within Providence of just men and women in general, it has to really be done in the right way. And I felt like this is so important to talk about, because nowadays there have been kind of cases where we're not going about it in the right way. And it's not to point fingers, but also a lot of times, you know, it kind of comes at a time of weakness, like a moment of weakness that we have, and then, you know, things kind of cross the line. But with specifically with regards to the blessing, I was like thinking like, like, you know, there's a right way to do things. And if you don't do it in the right way, I saw with these cases with these blessed family who I talked to after like 30 years, that there's a reason why it doesn't work out. Like, you know, like sometimes like, you know, like something would like give certain instructions and it wouldn't be clear why for certain people, like with regards to marriage and stuff like that. But when these people stayed together for like 25 years, they saw why those instructions were given in their case. And so I was like really moved, like hearing a lot of these stories. And so I really want to call this out, because like even like there might be many people going through like a period of weakness right now, or a period of like questioning and like wondering and trying to figure out their life, even with regards to this question about this relationship between them and the opposite sex, whether it's with blessing or with anything too. And I really felt like it has to be done in the right way. But yeah, but that's like kind of part of the conversation I was talking about with some of the members throughout this week.
Well, so what is the question like that we're trying to?
Yeah, so it's like going back to that thing. It's like yeah, like what is appropriate, right? Like, and so this is a conversation topic that I think an answer needs to come from everyone, like between how to engage appropriately between guys and girls.
Well, in my opinion, partly I think that's why it is sometimes kind of awkward, because it's is talking to the opposite sex inappropriate or not. Like, also, like if you have confusion or uncertainty, then it's like really awkward, because you're not sure what is appropriate and what is not appropriate when it's not very clear. So I think that does contribute to the awkwardness, because sometimes I think you know, there's a lot of different opinions, I guess, of what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, depending on maybe country, culture, and maybe the way leadership, or you're not sure what Sansanim exactly has said about that. And then like, because at the workplace, you're at work, you kind of know it's professional, but it's a professional setting, and your female colleagues, you talk to them naturally, like you're working on something, you know, and it's very natural interaction. It's not really weird, or it doesn't get inappropriate, because that wouldn't be acceptable in the workplace as well. So it feels like it's more clear, I guess, in the workplace maybe than internally and within Providence. Maybe that's the reason why. So actually maybe talking about it, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, would help.
Well, I think one thing we do need to take into consideration is like when it was getting close to the rapture, like that was supposed to be a time the condition of purity had to be set very, very strongly, right? Like during that time. So I think everyone understood we were like crazy preparing for the rapture.
Yep.
No media, no, you know, no music, no nothing. Like right before the rapture, it was pretty strong and strict, right? And I think what Julia said is probably the best way to put it is, we don't know a clear line, but out in the world, there are clear lines. Like, you know, exactly in the social context. If I'm at work, we talk about work things, right? And outside of work, we could be more friendly, but there's always like a context of everything that we're doing. But I felt like in Providence, it was like you didn't know where the line was, and it was just everything was bad, which I think would confuse people more.
So yeah, actually, that was like something we can definitely pick up on too. Like it's not clear. So one thing that was interesting for me was like growing up in Providence at a very young age, especially among second generation. When we were like super young, there's like not really like a strong division, right? You're just kind of all kids together. And actually, that period, you learn so much from the interactions together. Like there's a lot of good interactions, but there's also a lot of bad ones, right? When you're a child and you're just starting to figure things out. But actually, like after like that period, I think, and it's a very crucial period, you start to figure out like, oh, okay, like what's an appropriate way to engage with this person and what's not. And sometimes you make mistakes with it and stuff too. But then I always thought that the kind of balance that we struck between like second gen, who've at least made it to past the point of realization and stuff, it was always a good sort of balance. Like it was like not doing anything inappropriately, but engaging with each other in a very natural way. So actually, this kind of question about like what like when we became more like adults, and like you said, there was like this lack of clarity, and sometimes to the point where it's like, okay, just don't talk to each other at all, sort of thing. That was actually like, it was kind of shocking, like because it was like so jarring to like kind of place what we experienced growing up into that context. Like, it didn't really click and make sense for me actually.
Yeah, I think like another thing that I was thinking about too when it comes to the interactions, I was, one thing that I thought that was really is kind of weird for me when it comes to the interaction between guys and girls is like it didn't even allow for like regular like the here's the thing, like sometimes when you have like when Eddie just said there's natural conversation, right? And in natural conversation there is laughing in natural conversation. So it's not like it's like imagine there's a girl named what, let's just get a random name that no one has, Georgina.
Rigid.
Let's go Georgina. I couldn't like Georgina. It's not gonna be like, hey Georgina, what do you do you have it done? Good, right? And then you just walk off like you got it set, nothing beyond the work part, and then you're done. And it just felt so rigid to me. But natural means sometimes you're gonna laugh and joke around. But for me, like if you guys know me, I'm super super extroverted. It became something where it's like, oh, you're so bad. Yeah. But like, where would you draw the line when it comes to like being a little bit playful?
I guess it would just depend on how well you also know the person. Because for me personally, if I don't know someone that well, I'm not really going to be joking around too much, honestly. That's just me. I'll be just more like ... The thing that needs to be done is done. Okay, bye. But if I know someone a little bit more, and even if they're the opposite gender, then I'll probably joke around a little bit more. I'll just be more of myself. It's not like I'm trying to make the situation lighthearted or I'm trying to be funny. Just act more natural, more relaxed. But yeah, again, I just think it just depends on how well you know the person as well. But if you're comfortable in like an open setting when there's a group or like Pastor Sky is more extroverted and he's just like naturally is just good with people, good with communicating with people, then I think it's I wouldn't say that it is inappropriate, you know?
I do want to mention something that Mason said. It was like towards the end. I feel like groups, what we do in groups are important. I feel like groups are a time where you could be a little bit more relaxed and not like relaxed in like how you are feeling, but just like in your demeanor. And I bring this out, like I think it's better to like talk about in terms of stories because some of this sounds like theoretical unless it's like
right
to a story, right? But I remember at one of the retreats we had, there was like a member who I like didn't know at all. but they came to help out for the retreat. And I was like so thankful, and like they got along well with they were like part of the staff, so they got along really well with the rest of the people at the retreat. And so this person was from a different church, so I like didn't know them at all. But when I actually went to their church and saw them, they were like a completely different person, like there. And it was like, it was also because this person was a girl, but I was just like, we were naturally trying to say hi, and so I wanted to thank her for her help from during the retreat and stuff. But even in a large group, like they were totally shut off. Not just actually from me, but from talking to like any of the guys, like in a very large group. And so for me, I think that was like one thing where I was like, oh, this is a little bit unnatural, because I saw at the retreat, actually the you that was presented there was a lot more natural, right? I wouldn't do it like on a personal level. And I think, on a personal level, we do have to be a little bit more careful, but at least in that sort of environment, it felt like it was actually detrimental.
What about you, Julius? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I did. Well, to me, it did feel like, it did feel like banter was a bit inappropriate. So I kind of felt like, oh yeah, should in a like Eddie said, in a large group setting where there's lots of people, it's kind of like more I guess well, I guess more safe, because it's like it's general banter with among the group, but like yeah, like in conversation with the opposite sex, it kind of felt banter would be, or like a lot of laughing kind of felt inappropriate. It having that kind of interaction, just because you I guess you wanted to be on the safe side to make the interactions proper, rather than, even though it might not really mean anything. So like a little bit was, just general, like something happens to be funny, it was kind of okay, but it shouldn't be too loose.
Right. Oh, I like that word, loose, being too loose. Yeah. That one kind of makes more sense to me. Is like, you're being natural, but you're not being like kind of letting yourself go. And I think that's like that would be like like the example I would give is like, when you're at your work, you don't let your personality all out. You're at work, right? So there's a line that you just don't really go beyond. But do you guys think that because of the way, if it's too strict, right? I'm not going to just talk about Providence, but in general, if things are too strict, it will be a detriment to people's social life.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. If they grow up like that, yeah.
If they grow up in Providence, what'd you say? Shots fired. Shots fired. Maybe I'm not on the right side.
No. Well, yeah, it's so I've heard, right? Like, sometimes I've heard. Well, I don't know how true it is. Yeah. Where things were at some places, because like every place it might be kind of different.
Right.
At some places it was so strict and such that in the world they cannot have normal interactions.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because one of the things I know is, as being a leader, we hear a lot of different things, and it makes me think very deeply about what our reaction should be. Like, for instance, let's just say that two people begin a relationship in the church. Obviously, like they start and then, something happens. So when someone hears that, then they're like, all right, everyone cut off everything and no one talks to it. Like, then they'll start cutting everything off because of a certain situation, right? And I'm not sure what your thoughts are, but my first thoughts are usually those are very rare and special cases. And they're going to happen. Like, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but it's a rare and special case. I don't think any church is 100% perfect in that area. I don't think anyone is, right? And should that be the reason why we become like strict at that moment because of that? Or should we just be more aware? Like, what do you guys think?
Well, I don't know. I feel like this might be a wrong answer too, but it's one that we talked about last week, kind of related to that. Was like it has to be like I don't want to say a personal choice, but it has to come from like your self understanding. Like what I mean is like when we were young, when we like split up between like guys and girls, like even in terms of our seating arrangement, it was done because we knew that that's what we should do. Right. But then at a certain point, like, and in certain situations, it became, no, you have to sit like separate guys and girls. And it was like a kind of like a written sort of requirement, which is like before it's like, no, like we just know that we should sit separately. And like, you know, and you want to sit separately too, because you understand like what that means. And you know, why that's important. And so what we talked about last week is like, oh, like it has to come from like yourself. It has to be like more of a mental sort of boundary that you set, and not just a written requirement somewhere. Because you can require something to do it, you can mandate someone to do it, but then actually like if in their mind they don't understand why, or they don't want to, then the problem that you're trying to avoid is still there. And it can still happen too.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Like if they don't really understand why we are doing it this way, then I'm not going to speak for well, I am kind of speaking for myself. We become more rebellish. Like we become more of a rebel because of like, I don't get it. Why are we doing this? And then we want to swing to the other side because we just don't understand it.
Yeah,
I think I think maybe it's like taking away free will. I'm not sure. Mason, what were you going to say?
I'm not like that personally, but I do know that there's some other members that would respond in that way. Like, oh, why are all these rules and regulations in place without an explanation as to why they're in place? I don't like it because I don't understand it. Because there's no explanation, I'm not going to adhere to these rules and regulations. And again, that's not how I think particularly, but I do think that when there are guidelines set in place, like for example, when you're a kid and you're doing whatever, playing soccer in the front yard, whatever, some random example, but your parents are like, don't do that. And then the kid is like, but why can't I do that? Because I said so. I remember listening to a psychologist explaining that that is not a right way to handle that situation. You have to explain why that is. Then the child would be more, or in this, for this particular conversation, the members would understand more. Okay, because we're trying to avoid X, Y, and Z. This is why such guideline is in place. People would be more, not 100%, but people would be more willing to adhere to those guidelines because there is a clear reason why they are there.
I think, and that's where I guess in the past, I think I've probably done it myself too, is where the ultimate way of making people do something is like, Sunstein said it. And it's just like boom, right? And everyone's hands are off. Like that's like the nuclear bomb. That's where we're like, oh, okay. Then I think one thing that happens is it diminishes the authority of his name. Because eventually you're like, well, why did he say it? There's gotta be a reason. Is there a context to it? Like, why is he saying this kind of thing? And then it'll be the same thing as we don't understand it. And then we're going to start going, we start to kind of inch towards it. Like, why? And I think that I've seen that as something that I couldn't understand when I was growing up too. Like, so you said it. So that's just the way it is. Right. What? You don't believe, are you a Providence member? I'm just like, okay. Right. I got it kind of thing.
Yeah. I do think that when it comes to especially in Providence too, that when things are handled in that kind of way, there will tend to be in either a greater or a smaller scale some sort of a backlash.
Right.
People are not gonna. I mean, me personally, without any justification, I don't like being told what to do for no reason.
Right.
Like, I don't like that. Like, hey, do this. Why? Well, because that doesn't make any sense. Like, you got to tell me why you want me to do this certain thing, right? So I think when it comes to Providence and for, let's say, like keeping the purity or whatever, and there's certain guidelines that are set up in the church, like the classic guys sit over here, girls sit over here. When I first started coming to church, I didn't ask any questions. I just noticed that it was just set up like that. I didn't
Right.
ask questions. I was just like, oh, okay, maybe this is just how it is. And I just started doing the same thing. I didn't care. Because I saw like, oh, okay, this is a organization. This is an establishment. It's set up this way. I'm not going to impose my own kind of ideology and be like, oh, I'm going to do this because whatever. Like, no, I'm coming in. I'm adhering to the guidelines. I see that there's a distinction. I've learned the lessons. I understand why that this is set up. It all just clicked in my brain. Like, I'm like, okay, cool. Guys sit over here, girls sit over here. No big deal. Got it.
Right.
But if it's taking steps further beyond that, like you can't talk to members of the opposite sex. You can't do co-ed this. You can't do co-ed that. Why? And that's happened in the past too. Like we can't do co-ed sports. Why? Why can't we do co-ed sports?
Because while you're playing sports, all of a sudden you hit each other, you start rolling on the grass together, and boom, it's done.
You've committed the fall. You are excommunicated from the church. Never come back again.
That's interesting too, right? Because the girls actually mentioned at their church they do have co-ed sports, and then we've had co-ed sports at times too, right? So even that's
I mean,
we've never done it. It's not, same for us. We've not really had separate sports, really.
Yeah. There's been times with the LA church where it's like, it's co-ed sports. Oh, but now it's not co-ed sports. Oh, co-ed sports is okay because we have female newcomers that are joining. So now co-ed is okay. So it's always kind of been back and forth. It's always been this weird kind of thing with the LA church that I never really got never really understood. And there was never any real clear explanation to it other than, oh, this is for the girls and this is for the guys. I'm like, we have female newcomers that are coming and playing soccer every week regularly. Why is it that we can't have, co-ed sports? Like, if there's a real explanation and a logical and a sensible explanation, I would jump on board if it made sense. But there's just no explanation. So I'm like, why don't the female members come and join and play soccer too? If that's the case, then I'm not going to say anything because we have female newcomers. And I think it's a good idea because the female members could talk to the female newcomers and potentially get them to learn Bible study. So that makes sense in my mind. Just separating and going back and forth and not having a clear reason as to why doesn't make sense to me. And it doesn't frustrate me, but it's kind of like,
it sounds like it frustrates you.
I guess annoying would be the more appropriate word. Annoying would be accurate. But yeah, I get that other part that you mentioned, Sky, like, oh, it's really easy to just collide with people and yada yada.
Is that what
my reflexes are too good? My reflexes are too good, and I've never ran into any female member ever.
But what about Julius? You guys are all co-ed over there too?
Well, for the sports, look, things have been different at different points over my time in Providence. But yeah, at the moment, we always do co-ed sports whenever we have sports. Like, it's not really that big of a deal. Like, we play volleyball as a church together. It's like a church activity.
Right.
Yeah. So like the whole church plays because it's a small church. And whoever doesn't want to participate, they just watch.
Right.
But yeah, we all do the sports together. It's
Okay, so we're kind of looking at, like, say if it's a church activity, it's okay in most cases, right? So
Yeah.
what about when it's smaller groups?
That's yeah, that's done separately. We
But
do
I mean, like, what is considered a smaller group?
Maybe
department
that's
level.
like kind of part of that like a distinction. Part of that is like depends on the purpose of what it is that you're doing. Like if you say like a church-wide thing, I think that has a different connotation than like a smaller group of any kind.
So what would be like still a church thing, like say a meeting for like a department, whatever it is, and sometimes there's just a male leader and a female leader, but they have to have a meeting when hey, we're running the campus together, let's go over, we're talking about this, or
It's interesting because I don't want to make it situational, just like what Mason says, sometimes like a back and forth sort of thing. But at the
Right.
same time, it's like we're trying to navigate through that kind of all of these sort of real situations based on these kind of hypothetical ideas, right? But like I guess like a couple of things that come to mind with that. I remember there was a time that happened to me because I'm the male SS rep here,
right.
and then like I had to work together with the female rep, and then in my mind, we had a couple of advisors because both of us are really young, right? And we were really grateful that we have advisors too. But every time we met, the advisor joined us for
Right.
our meeting, and I felt bad actually for the people helping us, because I was like, wow, like they have to come join every single one of our meetings, even though like they have their own missions, and like some of our advisors were like head leaders and they had other missions, the whole nation too. So I was like they're busy too, and so I thought it was okay to meet with just the female rep by myself. And there were a couple of times that we did, and they're we'll have like brief.
Are you confessing? Oh my gosh, I don't think you can join this man cave anymore.
He's
Actually,
tainted.
are you sure? I feel like I should be here if that's the case.
That's true. Yeah, because you got the most problems. We need to manage you.
There we go. But yeah, but then like so then the advisor actually talked to us about it, and like they made it like they made us see it from the perspective of realizing that it can be a very grave thing, and they told me that like they don't mind, like their perspective on it was completely different. Them joining their meeting was something that they wanted to do, whereas for me, I was like always thinking that it was like a responsibility for them that I don't want them to have to do. But I did.
In leaders lingo, that means I have to do it. They don't really want to do it, bro. Just want to let you guys know that.
Well, this person, this person's a little bit of an oddball. I think they really wanted to be.
Oh, weird. What kind of leader is that? They're too honest. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I think that's it's like even us discussing right now, there is no line. Like we can't. There's always a different situation. Like there really isn't a line. But it's something that's like we learn as we go. But I think it's hard to learn if we've made the culture in the church judgmental. Because then you're super conscious of it all the time. Right? Like you could be talking just a real normal, like you're supposed to be talking to this person, but then someone walks in and they're like, oh, and you're like, you feel bad about something you're okay, you can be doing. You know what I mean? Like I think maybe it's part of it could be like our churches sometimes build a culture of judgmental. Hey, did you come to pre-dawn? Hey, why didn't you come to church? Or hey, why are you talking to that person? Who are you hanging out with? Kind of thing. And sometimes I do think it could feel that way. It might not be on purpose, but I think that could be one thing. I'm not saying all churches like this either, but I felt it before, and I think, personally speaking, I probably could have. I might have I probably did something like that too when I was younger. Younger means anything before today.
Did that yesterday?
It's possible. It's very possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think will be like a remedy for this then? or a step towards it?
Well, one thing that I did feel, and this is based on actually some of the comments that one of the members wrote, which I
Yeah.
understood, right? In related to what you said, we're talking about how there's no line, but one of the lines I think we did kind of figure out over, like, I don't know, the last few decades too, is that there can't be no communication, because
Right.
I feel like if there's no communication, it really doesn't work out for everyone, right? So then if we know that there has to be communication, we can really think about, oh, what's effective communication? Like
Right.
effective both in terms of like getting things done, but also making sure that like things are going well and that there's no issues too. Like what you mentioned, like, you know, in some ways, I think, you know, if it's like a one-on-one sort of thing, it does have to be a bit more careful, but not like safeguard is so much all the time. Like if you two are like the first two people at the church, right before a meeting or something, and like and you're like you shouldn't just sit there awkwardly necessarily.
Right.
Yeah, but then if it's like if you can avoid it for some in some way, in a natural way, then yeah, maybe that's something to work towards.
Quick question for you guys: are you guys extroverts or introverts? I know I asked this before, but it was different people in that group too.
Last time I mean, I took an MBTI personality test.
Yep.
Last year, and I was basically 50-50. So it just depends really what kind of what the situation is, who's there. It'll determine if I'm more extroverted or introverted.
Oh, okay. So you're like an ambivert.
Yes.
It's like you're no, forget. I was gonna forget it. Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Next. Sorry, this is too much of a man cave that's public. Next, Eddie.
I think we gotta dim the lights and make it actually like a cave or something. Say things in secret. But I would definitely say I'm an extrovert. I like being by myself at times too, but I do notice that the way I behave in a group is very different from when I'm just by myself. I'm a lot more energetic when I'm with other people.
Right, and you're like an atmosphere maker.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you say in your church? Do you have more extrovert? Oh, well, you definitely have more introverts, but is there someone else who you would say is like, oh, they're like another really big extrovert or bigger than you? Is there anyone else like that in your church?
Oh yeah, for sure. Here, I mean, right now I'm in Hawaii, and I definitely feel that. But it's interesting you mentioned that, because most of those people are guys actually. Like
really?
The big, loud, extroverted people, they're all guys. Now that I think of it.
Big and loud, but what about like making the atmosphere?
I would still say the ones that I've interacted with, at least, they're all guys.
Okay. And they're more more of a, maybe not extroverted, but they're more of a atmosphere maker than you are.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh wow. How about you guys? Like Julius, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely feel our church is more introverted in general. Yeah, people. Yeah. Yeah, like probably like one or two. I'd say two extroverts that I know. Yeah.
Okay, so you can count them on your fingers. Like, oh, those two are obvious, and they're the ones that keep the mood going and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when they're around, yes.
Yeah. What about you, Mason?
I'm a half and half.
You're half and half. So and then in the church, you probably have these big like atmosphere making people.
Oh, for sure. And not even necessarily atmosphere makers, but
breakers.
I wasn't gonna say it.
We got people that just mess up the atmosphere. It's terrible.
Oh man. Okay, but yeah, I mean, there's people that have a presence. Let's just say that. I'm not going to say that it's negative or positive, but they definitely have a presence about them. And there's also people in the church that are just like very introverted. It's like they don't do much of the events. And if they go to some of the events, they're kind of just like over there on by the wall, just sitting down, talking with somebody. And they're not really out there going about doing things. So it's interesting. I mean, LA's got a lot of members, so
yeah. I for myself too is I'm definitely like, I'm like on the extrovert scale, the MBTI, I'm at like 93%.
Oh my gosh, dude. That's
Yeah.
nuts.
So I'm so far off on one side that I've only seen one case where someone was way more extra, like way more like out there than I am, right? I've only seen one case, and we didn't like each other, so it's like
There could only
it was
be
just
one.
this the whole time. So, yeah, but yeah, that's what I've experienced, because I am super extroverted, and I do think because most of the I'm going to just talk to you from a super extrovert's point of view, and you guys out there, I'm not sure there's many of you guys like this, but I felt misjudged a lot because there aren't a lot of extroverts, that I was always accused of like, why are you like, oh, why are you trying to be funny? Why are you trying to make them laugh? Why are you trying to do? I'm just kind of like, that's my character. Like, that's just who I am. I want the mood to be nice and funny and fun, so that we can, do better if it's a fun atmosphere kind of thing. And I felt that I was being judged. Like, people would come down on me from the top, like, you gotta watch yourself. And honestly, it's probably true. It's probably true that I do get a little bit too loose, as like Julia said. But I felt I was totally being judged because I was like the odd man out, where everyone's an introvert and there's only me.
I mean, that does make sense. I would also agree that Providence is comprised of a lot of people that are predominantly introverted.
Right.
So when people are, I don't want to say
useless.
loud.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say that out loud. Sorry. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
What was that?
Run it back. This is recorded.
See, here's the difference. Julius is introvert, and when I said useless, he's like, hey, what's that? What's that? But if it's an extrovert, they'd be like, yo, what are you doing? And then they'd start like shouting out and stuff. And Julius is like, hey, what did you say? Anything bad about me?
I can't help it, I'm just, I'm chilling.
Okay. I want to talk this one point that I like from the Powerpuff, the Provipuff Girls, is they said that there's these girls said that there's an emotional burden from hanging out with girls. It's like, it takes so much energy.
So I was gonna pick up on, it's related to that, but I was gonna pick up on what you just said, because I think it kind of feeds into that too. But I was gonna, because I remember the last thing the girls said in their recording was, "Do you have any questions like for the girls?" Right? And
right.
Not just a question for the girls, but for everyone. Like, because I didn't think about the fact of like that in my experience, it's only been guys who've been like, it's not that it's only guys who are extroverted,
right.
but I will say it's only been guys who like gather everyone together. Like, for me, that I've experienced, right? So I want to ask, like, because for me, just like what you said, and I've been misjudged by this too. Probably not as much as you, but
I made mistakes. I'm gonna admit that. Yeah, I'm stupid sometimes.
But I've been misjudged for that kind of thing too, and for various reasons. But I always felt like exactly like you said, that making that positive mood has been very important. So everywhere I go, if I see that there's like a need for that and a way to kind of get that naturally, then we'll just like pick things up and we'll go do that, right? Because I'm like, oh yeah, like, why is everyone just sitting around kind of like weird and not,
It's like the high school dance where everyone's like standing on the walls and no one's dancing, right? And like, let's go. You got to get everyone in, right?
Yeah. So actually, that's a good example too. It's like, you can imagine a guy, like kind of like a guy idiot, just like kind of going out in the front and like dancing and then starting to get other people to trickle in. But I haven't seen, at least in my experience, any girls who will really do that. Maybe once or twice, but yeah.
But I think girls will probably get judged more. And probably they're more girls. This is just my opinion. I think maybe because girls are a little bit more self-conscious of how people see them, that they're not going to make a fool of themselves like a guy would. Like, guys will make fools of themselves, and we have no problem with it. Well, I don't. Do you guys?
No.
Yeah, well, I feel like
No, well,
less.
Mason's good at that, so it works for you.
I've been doing it my whole life. Like,
Yeah, well, generally, I feel like um socially, like like it comes back to that disagreeable scale,
Right.
like less less conscious of what other people think, and that's a very required to be funny as well.
Right, right. And
To
comedy is
yeah.
usually self-deprecating too. Like you're just making fun of yourself and like the situations. And I think that's that makes a lot of sense too. But I think what I almost forgot what Eddie just said that I wanted. Oh, Eddie was saying that guys can bring people together more, right? Faster. And this is a true story. Like I'm not lying about this one. Well, I wasn't lying about the other stuff either, but when I was in LA at a church, like the guys would say, "Hey, let's go to Vegas this weekend," and all of us would, guys, we'd rent a car, we'd all get our time off, and we'd go for like 2 days to Vegas. We'd, some of us would sleep in the van, some of us would sleep in the hotel room. We'd shower in there after, and then we just have 2 days and we come back. And then the girls, they're like, "Oh, that's no fair," and we're like, "What do you mean fair? If you want to go, just go yourself, right?" And the girls were like, "Okay, we're gonna go," and then 6 months later, they still didn't go.
Did they tell you why?
They didn't even go. Like they were like all talking about, "Well, I don't have time here. Oh, but no, I can't do it this week." Like, there was a lot of like stuff that they had to. They couldn't get together. It was much more difficult. And maybe this is why the Provipuff Girls are more masculine, because they got together within 3 days and they got it recorded like in 3 days. Like they're
Right.
super initiative. They're all like wanting to do it. So I think they have that gung ho. I'm going to go do this kind of mentality. That's a little bit more of the masculine mentality.
I did feel that energy from the conversation that they had. Yeah,
You felt like it was like a mini man cave.
a little bit. Yeah,
it was Man Cave 2.0.
for sure.
They're saying stuff for like, "Me too, man.
Yeah.
Totally, me too."
I think we do have to throw out there that I was actually really grateful to hear the girls' conversation too, and for their efforts. I feel like we should have mentioned that in the beginning, but as guys go, we have to go through an hour and a half of making fun of them before we can say thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. Like, I really enjoyed the first episode.
Yeah, it was
yeah.
good.
I thought they were pretty polite too. They didn't say much bad stuff about us though. They don't have that
No.
masculine
I
vibe.
was waiting for them to rip in. Actually,
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought they were gonna tear into us, but they're not that.
I was
masculine.
waiting for it.
Yeah,
I was waiting for it the whole time. The only thing that came close to it was at the very, very end where they were like, "Oh, should we like do a challenge? Should we challenge the guys to something?" And that was pretty much it.
right.
even then they were a bit nice. They were pretty nice.
Yeah, they
about
were
it.
nice. Like
Yeah.
we didn't record it, but we were tearing into them before we started recording. So we just wanted to make sure it wasn't on the video.
Especially Mason.
Especially who, Mason? Yeah.
I am
Especially
such
Mason.
a nice guy. I didn't do anything. I said nothing. All right.
Do you guys think that my last question, because we're already over an hour. My last question to you guys is this: do you think that, because this question was in the episode 1 for the Provipuff, can guys and girls be friends?
There's a very fine line there. I think me, Eddie, and Martin talked about this vaguely in the last episode, but I think it's a very, very fine line.
Right.
So let's look at it just from a societal perspective, like not Providence or not former faith, but just society, right? Generally, guys will start to hang out with girls because they find them attractive in some way and they want to, go out with them and date them or whatever. That is the main reason why guys will hang out with girls. And I've seen like videos of it where people will be like, "Oh yeah," they'll talk to some girl and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, call your guy friend and tell him that you have feelings for him." And almost all of the time the guy will be like, "Oh yeah, I've had feelings for you too." So yes,
I've even seen it where they have a boyfriend and they call the boyfriend's best friend, and the guy's like, yeah, okay, I was thinking the same thing too.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
insane. It's insane, bro. So, I do not think that 100% of guys are like that, though. I really don't. But I think the vast majority, like 90, 95, 96% of guys
Right.
in the world behave in that manner. They see
I
a
thought
girl,
you're
they
gonna
start
say
hanging out with the girl.
96% in Providence. I thought you were gonna go
No,
there. I was like, whoa.
no, we're the I guess we're the outliers. We're like that 5% that don't fit into that demographic.
Right. But
I think
yeah,
it would be like that.
I agree. I do agree. General sense, like it's just natural attraction. There's a natural attraction no matter what.
Mm,
Right? It's just a matter of if people have the morals or the values of putting a line.
right.
Right. And
'Cause-
it's more often you'll find it in very religious and very like religious or spiritual people that will have a much, or these extreme people that have a much thicker line, which they just won't cross at all. But I think in general you're correct. Like I wouldn't even say 96. I'd be like 90.
99.
Yeah, 99%. Right?
Yeah. Because there's
like
that biological hardwire.
Yeah.
But
Go
I
ahead.
like what you said about the line not being crossed. Like for me, I think that line is important. And like, you kind of draw the line in different places, but it's essentially to the question of like, can guys and girls be friends?
Right.
Ultimately, even though I think and I say this knowing that I have girls that I'm close to, like in the
confessions coming.
dun,
that
dun, dun.
you would call friends, and yeah,
Right.
like I would label them as friends too. But like there is a line, and the line is like it has to be a hard line, right? If that line is broken, then honestly, most of the time, like you said, like 96%, it's not that it always leads to mistakes, but like the mistakes only happen if you cross that line. And,
Right.
and that's something I've learned, like not even in Providence, right? It's just something I learned while growing up, right? So
Right.
because I noticed the girls mentioned that too, that they have a lot of friends who are guys, and I genuinely believe that those people probably are their friends. Like I said, like I have friends like that too that I'm close to and I'm comfortable with, but
Right.
that line is still there.
I think like the general public, like guys, is they could be friends, but they're willing to cross the line if it comes up. When the opportunity comes, they'll cross it. It's just that there's no opportunity, so they won't cross it because you can't. There's a line there that's been set up. So I don't know, Julius, you look like you look so serious, like you're judging us because you don't have any of these thoughts or something like that. You're like, what the heck are these Providence guys?
I'm just listening in, trying to understand. Like personally,
Just
like
absorbing it all.
yeah, just taking it in. That's what extroverts do. With just listen to the extroverts speak.
But do you agree or?
Well, yeah, like for me personally, to be honest, like, when the friendship was kind of getting close, I kind of had to keep it distance the relationship a bit. Like I never, because I first of all, I just even like as a Christian, like because religious one, and never really had super close friendships with the opposite sex.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
just like a monk.
No, not just like it was not close. It was not too. It was like general. It was very surface. Like your friends, you can talk about stuff, but hanging out. I also think because I also went to a boys' school too. That played a part.
Oh, yeah. So you swing the other way.
Yeah, Catholic boys' school. Yeah, yeah. Well, my mom was making sure she was taking every precaution she could.
Well, I think that's true. Yeah.
Because it kind of felt risky to be too close.
Yeah.
So,
like even I think was your family a little bit strict?
Yeah, a little, especially I was the firstbborn, I think also too.
Okay. Yeah, so you must be messed up.
Yeah, my mom was super Christian, so she was like, no dating until after high school.
Oh wow.
Dang. Okay.
My mom's trying to get me on a date now. But yeah, even for me, because I was like a really hardcore Christian, Jesus freak. Like we were so bent on like, like no like relations before marriage. Like zero. Like it was such an ingrained thing in my mind. And you guys got to know that I'm way older than you guys, which means I'm even more old school. And the old school Christian church is even more conservative than it is now. Well, it's not really conservative anymore. But
yeah, definitely.
My generation was crazy. Like it's like the whole divorce was frowned upon. You couldn't divorce. Yeah, so my generation was very strict.
I did want to say, because I know like some of the girls mentioned that they have like guys who they're closer to, and like some of them have more guy friends than girlfriends, and they also said that they feel more comfortable talking to guys. And I think those things are all understandable, like because it makes sense to me too. One thing that I will say, like from observing other guys too, because like in the world, like people are just they're like all over the place, right? They're very they have no restrictions of any kind like this too. So one thing I see is that guys in the world, they do kind of carry out their actions, and they live in a way where like it seems like they can have friends who are girls too. Right. But when I like kind of really observe their character, it really feels like they're doing a lot of mental contortion to make that possible. Like it's just like it's like going against the grain of like your I don't know. I wouldn't even call it just biological instinct. I think it's biological, but it's cultural, and it's like all of these. And so I do want to tell the girls, like, yeah, sure. What your relationship with your friends? I think they're real, and I think it's thankfully they've been positive and they've been very helpful too. But I will say that the mental contortion and like that thought process is there for all guys.
And I wouldn't say it's any different than any guy in Providence. It's just it's a normal thing. It's part of like your DNA, like to procreate, have fulfill the purpose of creation is like the ultimate thing, right? And in Providence, it's just we have that a much thicker line of the places we can't cross. Some people might go into the thickness of the line, but they won't cross it, kind of thing. I'm not talking about myself, just saying it's possible. Yeah.
I think God had to make your line extra thick, peace guy.
dude, I've been digging for a while, bro. There's just no end to this line. Either way, guys, we've been going on for like an hour and a half. Just want to let you guys know that.
Oh wow!
I will edit this so that I'll take some pieces out here and there just to kind of bring it down to something where people can listen to and watch. Because it's a I don't know if it's a heavy topic, but it's a sensitive topic. Yeah. And I think the only way we can really get to understand it is if we really discuss it, right? Discuss it and understand it better. And then this is when we're going to be able to see our own lines. And I think one thing that Sunseem did say that I really agree with is like after the rapture, like we're mature. We've reached the point where we're mature. And when you reach maturity, this is where you're responsible for yourself. Like you got to take responsibility for yourself. And I think ultimately in the end, Sunseem said this, when Sunseem talks to the guys, he's like, as long as you don't cross the line, the fall will never happen. As long as you're strong. But then when he talks to the girls, he's like, hey, as long as you're strong, as long as you don't cross the line, the fall will never happen. Right? So I think it's now that we've reached a certain point in history, we're mature and we have to be able to be responsible and hold ourselves accountable. And I would say like in a podcast like this, we're kind of holding each other responsible too. Yeah. So if you guys ever see one of us missing from the podcast, it's because we don't, we caught them and kicked them out. They did something bad.
Yeah. They have been excommunicated effective.
We'll start with Past This Guy, then we'll have to kick him out of his own podcast.
Hey, you got to prove it first.
I'm publishing a book. Remember that?
Yeah, I know.
Is there like a Provi court that we have to go to like officially like here's Exhibit A, Pastor so and so?
Yeah, there's a Provi court. It's very silent, and it's basically I either get struck by lightning or get hit by a car. It's one of those things are going to happen if you know what happened to me. Like, oh, okay, well, I guess he dug past the line.
He finally broke through.
He finally broke through. All right, guys. Well, this is it. This is an hour and a half, a little bit long, but super grateful. Thank for everyone for joining us. All you guys out there listening. I hope you guys had a fun time, but also a time of deep contemplation too. All right, everyone, have a good week. We'll see you guys again. Bye-bye.